Hey, everybody. Welcome to the long-awaited, for me at least, episode 49 of Radio Free Ortona. And in this episode, we're going to talk about why this thing is called Radio Free Ortona. And we'll talk about why episode 49 is the one that's important to us, not episode 50.
Because he's a San Francisco football fan.
Well, that too, but
Are you?
not really.
Good.
Well, back in the, what is it, Joe Montana, Jerry, was Jerry Rice there? Yeah.
Yes, he was.
Oh, yeah, they were cool back then when they were like, what'd they take, like 3 Super Bowls?
Something like that. I'm not a 4-down ball fan.
Yeah,
but, yeah, like I've heard of them.
They were something like about this when they because they were like kind of contemporary when the Bulls were dominant in basketball, and it was kind of a mini dynasty. There.
Did I ever tell you the story about the Palmer 49ers?
No.
Okay, it's very appropriate for this episode.
Okay, well, we get into it.
Yep, let me know when you're ready.
For that story?
It's yeah, it's very entertaining. A connection between our regiment and the San Francisco 49ers.
Oh. Yeah, so why do we call this podcast Radio Free Ortona? It probably comes from our connection. What got us all together in this room was the fact that we all served in the Loyal Edmonton Regiment. And that's
What?
And that's how we know each other.
Ooh.
Why do we do that? Such an American thing. That I never understood.
My understanding is because it really annoyed Chris Atkin, who was
would make sense.
For those who don't know, he was a larger-than-life personality in the regiment. He enlisted as a private soldier, rose up through the ranks to become regimental sergeant major, was at a young enough age where he still had time left before mandatory retirement, and he then commissioned. He single-handedly, through the sheer force of his will, built what would become the Regimental Museum.
Yeah.
Was a towering figure in the Regimental Association. Again, larger than life, very uncompromising, fiercely loyal to his subordinates, known to speak as he saw it, truth to power, which did not always earn him favor and accolades. Yeah. Made him a lot of enemies along the way. If he worked for you, you probably wanted to kill him. If you worked for him, you loved him.
Yeah.
Anyway, as a very playful sort of he was very he was a traditionalist, I would say. I'm looking.
Oh, no question. I remember getting jacked up by him as he was walking past, and I referred to eye discs as dog tags.
Right. Yes. And putting your hands in your pockets.
Yep.
That was American gloves.
Yeah.
And he really disliked and I think it was because he was very cognizant of tradition and identity, which is, this is maybe a good way to lead off this episode. He was very aware of the role and the importance of tradition and identity. And he didn't like these creeping Americanizations that were coming into our military.
Like whoa.
Like hooah. And so it was a very playful, almost affectionate poke of the bear.
Yeah.
Because people knew that he didn't like it, so they would deliberately hooah. The other one was Banzai. That was like, was it?
I missed that one.
1 or 2 platoon was doing that, in like the early 90s. It was Banzai. It was a thing that kind of appeared over 1 year and then kind of disappeared, sort of thing.
Well,
it was Met Rep every time we were at MilCon or WayneCon or Rendezvous. It was the big summer concentration X,
right?
And so they had this composite company. So there was like a platoon of LERs and a platoon of Cal Highs and I think a composite platoon out of one of the other brigades or something like that. And so the company would be assembled together for the morning prayers, the big morning O group. And the guy saw this, as you would expect from troops, like this is pointless. Why are we doing this? You're telling me a bunch of information I don't care about.
Yeah.
And so then they'd send out, each officer had to play some kind of role in this, right? So like the subbies are, one has to go out and give the Met rep. And so at the end of the Met rep, this was the thing, we're going to cheer for the Met rep. So he'd give a weather forecast, and then the entire platoon, and then, we thought that was funny as hell.
That is pretty funny in
The
retrospect.
OC, no,
Not so much.
So,
the sergeant major advised us that it was.
Was Atkins was OC on this one, or?
No. It
was just different.
Yeah, it was just a different guy altogether.
Oh.
Was it Cunningham? I don't really remember who the CSM was.
Oh.
So we've digressed already.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
But we're
So-
still on topic because
Still on topic.
Oh yeah, we're on topic.
Yeah.
So yeah, we all met
Yeah.
in the Loyal Edmonton Regiment,
Eddies,
which is, as he was about to say,
Formerly the 49th Battalion of the Canadian Expeditionary Force, and
Yep.
of course in the cap badge of the Loyal Edmonton Regiment, there is a big prominent 49 in there.
Yep.
we're also known as the 49ers.
Yes.
So Ortona,
Ortona.
what is the connection between the 49th, the Loyal Eddies, and Ortona? A city in Italy
Yes.
on the Adriatic coast.
Yes. Well, in the Second World War, it's a big battle. As the Allies were pushing up the boot of Italy, it was the 1st Division? 2nd Division. 1st Division. Canadian 1st Division.
Yeah, I think it was First Division. Yes.
Was pushing up the Adriatic coast.
Yep.
I can never remember what brigade we were, but the brigade containing the Loyal
Yep.
Edmonton Regiment, the PPCLI, which was only one battalion at the time,
Yep.
and the Seaforth Highlanders,
Yep.
along with the Three Rivers Tanks, I think was the army.
I think so. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. I should have brought my book by Julke with me.
Yeah. Actually, there's a great, if people want to listen, there's a great episode done by the Modern War Institute, the Urban Warfare Project at the Modern Warfare
Right.
Institute.
That's right. Yes.
Narrated,
I've heard that.
narrated by Jason Giroux, who is a urban warfare specialist in Gagetown, and he is like he has official links to the Modern War Institute at West Point.
Yep.
So he and John Spencer, who's the host of the podcast, went through the Battle of Ortona. So if you really want,
Yes, that's a good episode.
yeah.
That's neat.
Anyway, so yeah, the Seaforth Highlanders, the Loyal Edmonton Regiment, and the Patricias, we come up to this town of Ortona.
Yep.
And intelligence thinks they're looking for the Siegfried Line, I think.
Yep.
Right. And they thought the Siegfried Line was on the other side of the town, like north a few miles.
Yeah.
They did not realize that it was, in fact, the anchor of
yeah.
the Siegfried Line on the Adriatic coast.
Yeah.
I'd actually take a step back, if I may.
No, you
mean-
may not.
The first action of the Loyal Edmonton
didn't even
Regiment
listen.
in the Second World War was the landings in Sicily,
Sure.
Yep.
which
But we
brought
don't
us.
call this Radio Free Sicily.
That's true, but this is the lead up to it, and so we became part of this push,
Yeah.
onto the mainland and up the
Yeah.
mainland, and then Montgomery, who was in charge of
Yeah.
the Italian campaign, at least the Commonwealth side of it,
Yeah.
identified Ortona as a vital port
Yes.
to the war effort,
Yeah.
which is what led to the push.
Yeah. Like
for
it was a
Ortona.
very it was going to be the most forward port, so then we could move supplies by water and not by land.
Yeah.
which becomes important later.
Yeah.
I return.
Anyway, so as the intelligence underestimates the Germans' desire and willingness to hang on to the town of Ortona, and so the Loyal Edmonton Regiment is the first unit in, along with well, actually no, they didn't. They went in by themselves. There wasn't really any support.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah,
And it was and only one company, I think.
yeah.
Yeah, because they just thought it was going to be a move through, and
Yeah.
that the real defenses were beyond the town.
Yeah. That ended up not being the case. And it
Yep.
ended up being a almost week-long battle over Christmas in 1943.
Wasn't
right?
it longer than that? Only a week?
Well, it depends on how you gauge it, because there was the approach to the town as well.
Oh, I mean, like actual engagement in the city itself.
They were pretty, well, I mean, because the the last big battle before that was Morro River, I think.
Yeah.
And then they approached, and the approach to town was pretty uneventful. And it was once the LERs got into like the southern districts of the town, and because the Seaforths were sent off to the right towards the coast to take over. There was a basilica, I think, over there, and that's what they were looking for.
Were they on the right? I thought they were to the west.
No, I think they were on the right.
Okay,
if I recall. Unless it was a different company. Maybe it was a different company. But
I could be wrong.
as you can tell, I'm not a historian, and you should listen to the Modern Warfare Institute episode. But anyway,
The whole point is
this ended up being a big battle, and it was very large in the memories of all the units involved.
Yep. And it has relevance today because it set the doctrine of urban warfare for basically Commonwealth militaries to the modern era.
And influenced and the American military's way of doing it as well. It influenced everybody in the West.
Yeah.
The battle was, I think, sometimes called like a Little Stalingrad.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It was very intense. There was on both sides. The Germans, I think, lured a platoon of the LERs into a house and then killed most of them when they detonated the house and collapsed the house on top of the platoons. And then we did it back to them at least once. So stuff like that happened. It was a very, very intense battle.
I think,
and it looms very large in our history.
well, and that's the thing. I think for us, this is why we call it Radio Free Ortona, the Ortona portion of it. It is probably our most significant battle honor.
Yep.
I mean, there are some from the First War, but Ortona is the big one. It is the rallying cry, the battle cry.
Yeah. And it's like, because I mean, we went to Northwest Europe after the Italian campaign, but it's just like Northwest Europe.
Yeah,
on the battle.
It's called Northwest Europe.
Yeah.
Right. Ortona is specific and it's bloody. It's also because we actually interacted with some of the gentlemen who were there.
Yes. This is true as well.
I mean, and there are some famous pictures. Like, I grew up reading history books, picture books of the Second World War. And, there were pictures from the Italian campaign. I didn't realize at the time because I was, this was 20 years before I'd ever joined the regiment. Mm-hmm. As a teenager, a young teenager, I'm reading these books, seeing these pictures. Later on, I met some of the men who were in those pictures.
Right.
Yes. Right. There's the famous picture of, I think it's Ed Boyd, who was one of the survivors of the collapsed building.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And he's being dug out. And that's a famous picture.
Yeah.
We've met that gentleman.
So we were part of the 2nd Infantry Brigade.
It was 2nd Brigade, right?
Under Bert Hoffmeister.
Yeah, Hoffmeister was the brigade commander for sure, And Jim Stone was the CE.
Battalion commander, yeah.
So,
I believe, was it not Hoffmeister who would then go on to command
he eventually became
our troops in Korea?
Did Hoffmeister go to Korea? I can't remember.
I don't know. Hoffmeister's a bad name in my book.
Why is that?
I,
He's widely considered to be probably our best brigade commander of the war.
In the entire Canadian Corps.
Yeah.
I don't know. When I read about the battle for the ravine on the approaches to Ortona, he just kept feeding men in there without any imagination whatsoever.
Vokes? I think that was Vokes.
Yeah.
Who really put severe, constraints on his brigade commanders and would only allow them frontal assaults.
Yeah, Chris
like,
Vokes,
to me, that was Vokes.
Chris Vokes
division
was a major general, was the division commander, and was Hoffmeister's immediate boss. And Vokes' reputation, Hoffmeister's reputation is pretty good post-war. Vokes' reputation is definitely not as good.
No, Hoffmeister did not go to Korea. Stone did.
Stone
did not.
Yeah. Yeah, as an aside, talking about Korea, when the 2nd Battalion of the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry was formed, it was something like 360 ranks of the battalion were actually LERs, including the CO and RSM.
Yeah.
So we like to sometimes joke that the Capion Battle Honor was like second, was 2 LER.
It was really, 2 LER.
It
not 2 PPCLI.
Well, we're still officially 4th Battalion.
at the time,
Yeah.
or shortly after, that also led to the whole subunit designation of at first 3 PPCLI right up until the 1960s.
Yeah.
And then actually it was in 71
I can't remember.
when they got rid of the other 3 battalions, the Canadian Guards, the Queen's Own Rifles, and what was the other battalion? Oh, the Black Watch.
Yeah.
When they stood those down to go back to the original 3 Reg Force battalions, and they
Reg Force
reassigned.
regiments.
Yeah, Reg Force regiments. Thank you. And then the people from the Queen's Own were rebadged 3 PPCLI, so we got bumped to 4 PPCLI.
Yeah.
Which is another fascinating kind of topic all in its own. Like, what is the value of those regimental subtitles, and what role did they play?
Many military, we'll talk about this, right? And it's part of the tradition. The tradition is part of what motivates you once you're in, right? It's part of the cement of the bond between troops. Is that tradition? And speaking of being for PPCLI, I remember I think it was when the PPCLI had their 75th. And they were looking for LERs to be part of that ceremony.
Yeah, be part of that parade.
And I got brought into that. Ironically enough, I think it was Chris Atkins who brought me in.
Yeah.
And at the time, if my memory serves, I might be mixing up some stuff, but if my memory serves, this was after I blew my knee out on first basic in 97, and I hadn't qualified even as QL2, so technically I wasn't allowed to carry a rifle.
Yeah.
And yet, they needed bodies. They threw me in there. And, so we went up to Namale, which was Lancaster Park at the time still, I think. And we learned, so we were set aside as a separate company.
Yep. Was it a company or just a platoon?
Might have been just a platoon. I can't remember.
Because I don't think we'd be able to put.
I don't think we wouldn't have been able to muster
or we were included.
We would have been put in there, and our color party was part of because Demo Dave was carrying the colors for that one,
right?
And they had the colors of the 3 battalions, and then the LAR colors, came up as 4th.
And we had to learn this goofy little special Patricia,
foot drill.
Yeah, like when you came to attention or you stopped marching, there was some fucking thing you did.
Yeah, some kind of double halt or something.
Or no, you had to swing your foot like it was.
Yeah, something like that.
You did this extra thing with your foot.
And they had a different right dress or something like that too, didn't they?
That I don't remember.
Yeah, they had some. Yeah, some regimental drill that they do. Yeah.
But the reason I bring this up, and this was very powerful for me, when we did the march past. And I'm just like, I'm here. I'm a number.
Yep.
We're here to support the Pickleys, whatever. Right? All the spectators were clapping. There were quite a few of them.
Yeah.
And I may get a little bit emotional here. And cheers.
Yeah.
And then out of those cheers was, well done, 4th Battalion.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of that. Like our members, our veterans were there. And they were cheering us on. And I'm like, so these are the guys who fought in Ortona. They were cheering for me. I'm like, how fucked up is that? Right? But we had done them proud. So that's one of the things that drove me, that made me proud, that solidifies why the 3 of us have a bond, why we call this Radio Free Ortona, is because of that representation. That's how powerful it is. We represented those guys and we did them proud. And so anytime anyone comes to me and says, thank you for your service, well, I didn't do anything.
Right.
But I will happily take your thanks on behalf of those who did.
What traditions are you guys aware of that have that stay with the LARs from that time, or markers or practices that call back to that period?
Well, for me, I think the mouse holing is the thing.
That's more doctrinal.
But it's...
I mean, like, say, an informal practice, like a marker of identity.
Well, to me, it is a marker of identity. And I'll tell you why. Right? And it is one of the lectures I give on leadership, right? It's improvisation. It's adaptation, right? It's where leadership overcomes management. Because standard operating procedures, you had the Germans and you had the Canadians, right? Standard operating procedure for the Germans was, standard operating procedure for the Canadians was, we have to clear all of these houses on the way to downtown. We have to get to the town square, right? So you're going down between these rows of houses. You have to clear out all those houses as you go. And which means you start at the end of this row of houses. You start the first door, kick it in, work your way up, clear it out, come down, move to the next one, go up again, right? Which is tough on its own. Yeah. In the meantime, every second row of houses, the Germans had blown up, created this field of rubble, so it became that much more difficult to do. Now you've got...
They planted mines and stuff.
Yeah, and it's tough to move
Lots
over.
Lots of booby traps.
It's tough to move over, and you're getting all this fire coming down here, machine gun fire, pre-sighted and all that. It's a freaking nightmare, right? So that's the two SOPs at work. The Canadians had to do this job. The Germans had made it that much more difficult. So did we take the bait? No. Now, it seems to be an open question, was the Seaforths or the Eddies who came up with this? But the mouse holding technique was brilliant.
Sure. But everybody does it. What I mean is, like...
Not back then, they didn't. That was innovation.
What I mean is, for example, we used to march in columns of 4. Prior to World War I, we went everywhere in 4 columns.
Okay.
Instead of 3 now.
Instead of 3. Yeah. Now, of course, you couldn't just approach the trenches. You had, because you would be under artillery fire. So there were sunken roads. There were trench roads. And like, when you dig a hole, it's not a perfect, U shape. It's a V shape. It gets narrower as you go down. And that's just human nature. So the roads were narrower at the bottom than they were at the top. The trench roads didn't have room for 4 files marching abreast. So we just shortened to 3. And by 1918, by the armistice, that had become so institutionalized, we never went back to 4. That's kind of what I'm saying. Is there a tradition? Like how we talked about the RCR, how they have the Ortona toast. Are you guys aware of anything that we do as an identity marker? Like, I'm not aware that we ever marked the anniversary of Ortona.
Yeah, we do. There's Ortona Day.
What do we do for Ortona Day?
We parade at City Hall. Have you never been part of that?
I think I have. I just forgotten it. But we did, because it was around the Christmas break, right?
December 27th.
Yeah, so it was always in that Christmas stand down.
And yet we would show up. We would do a parade.
Do they still
I don't know if they still do it, but when I was in, we did it every year.
Yeah, I seem to recall doing an Ortona parade.
I mean, silly stories abound, right? But one of those was the time that we showed up, and of course, we all have to have identical uniforms.
Yeah,
and not everyone had name tags.
Right.
But I can picture him.
A dude, some NCO.
He was a sergeant at the time. His wife was a clerk. Thorlaxon.
Yeah. Okay.
So Doug Thorlaxon.
Yeah.
Had a whole bunch of extra name plates.
Yeah.
Right? So there were at least a half dozen of us named Thorlaxon. I was one of them.
That's amazing. That's
right.
Awesome.
So, and Bill Smith, who's the mayor at the time.
Oh yeah.
I never wondered. I always wondered. Well, mind you, he was in. Well, he was still in when I get in. But at some point after he got out, somebody should have made like 100 Turnbull name tags.
Yes.
Oh yeah, because he's the guy who's.
He was like Sad Dave Turnbull.
Dangerous Dave Turnbull.
Well, Mark Van Cavage always calls him Sad Dave Turnbull, right? Right? But he was the guy, if you were getting in trouble and you didn't have a name tag and they asked you your name, you said Turnbull.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Isn't he also the guy that, like, if if you're overseas and you hook up with a woman, that's the name you give?
Yeah, it was always.
Yeah,
He was
yeah,
kind
he
of
was
like
one of the-
he was
yeah.
the victim. I don't know how he got picked because he was contemporary with Doug Thorlixon and Tom
Yeah,
Payton.
he was.
Right?
He was a force of nature in the jump platoon.
When he was a master corporal when I got in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and then see when I got in the first time. I've served in the regiment in 2 separate occasions because I got in. I was in for 2 years. I got out. I was out for 2 years, and then I got back in.
Yeah.
For about 7 years.
Yeah.
And then and in that time I was out, Dave left.
Yeah.
So I
think
never really got to know him
I
that
think he
well.
went to Calgary.
That could
I think
be.
he moved to
Yeah, it
Calgary
might
for a
be,
civilian job, and he finished out his career with the Highlanders.
But listening to the stories like from Brome Deegan and
Oh,
just
yeah.
Turnbull stories of this.
Well, he was in his day. He was a pretty wild and crazy guy.
Yeah.
And he was a man of adventure. I'll say that. And so, of course, yeah, he would get into trouble. Or I guess maybe the complimentary way is to say good initiative, poor execution.
Execution, yeah.
Anyways, so
Yeah.
dialing it back,
The name
yes, we do celebrate Ortona.
Yeah, I
or
seem to
observe it.
recall. Yeah, I seem to recall that we would do Ortona parades, and I seem to recall there would be a church parade with that or something like that. Like they would do a drum, like they did. They would do a drum head altar for the regimental padre, and they had this altar cloth from Ortona that they would.
I never did
Yeah,
that.
somebody had an altar cloth or something.
That
like
might
that
have been before my
And I
time.
remember that we would do ceremonies at the Italian Cultural Center. And that's where I met Ed Boyd, where he told this story of like I was piping there. I did a lot of these parades as the piper, right? And there were some guys, there were some troops who were carrying the colors. It is a very small parade ceremony with the colors and all that. And so these guys went out to have a cigarette, and I just didn't want to stand by myself, so I went out. I was around the kind of butt can outside with them. And Ed Boyd comes up with his walker, and he pulls out his cigarettes, and he says, "You mind if I stand here with you sinners?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay." And he just launches into this story about when they go ashore in 1943. He's this young lieutenant, and this is his first experience of doing anything, right? And he said they got off the beach fairly unopposed, and they got to a seawall, and that was it. That's as far as they got. And then the Germans opened up on them. And so they all were sitting underneath this, say, 4-foot-high seawall. And they were sitting there with their legs split, like on their bums, with their legs out in front of them and their backs to the wall, leaning there. He said the Germans would just crack rounds off the top of the wall every 5 or 10 seconds or so. Just to make sure you knew that
Yeah.
certain.
Don't put your head up.
Yeah, it was certain death if you tried to move from here. So they're kind of saying, well, we're kind of stuck, so I guess this is as far as we go until we get some supporting fire to take out that. And Boyd said he was absolutely terrified, and he was shaking uncontrollably. He was trying to stop. He was trying not to show how terrified he was, but he was shaking absolutely uncontrollably. And he said his platoon sergeant's kind of looking at him up and down like, is this guy going to make it? And he said his platoon sergeant was an iconic figure. He had been on the raid at Spitsbergen. He had been in, since 39. He had been on raids to France. Like he was an impeccable figure. And he said he was ancient. This is a quote from Boyd. He said, he was ancient. He was at least 23.
Yeah.
And this guy's the sergeant looking at him. He says, maybe you should have a cigarette, sir. And say, yeah, okay, yeah. Anything for something to do with his hands. And the Boyd said, that's how I started smoking. And I said, that's why I use my veterans benefits to pay for my cigarettes. Said, I figure it's the government's fault that I started smoking. They can be the ones to pay for it. I love that line, though.
Yeah.
He was ancient. He was at least 23. Kind of shows quite the contrast to the conflict of today, where you've got frontline soldiers in their 50s.
Yeah.
in fighting on both sides in Ukraine.
Yeah.
We've almost changed our view now as to what the ideal military age is.
Well, not only that, just what it means to be an adult, what it means to be 18 these days compared to 100 years ago.
And also the way maneuver warfare is now, right? Combined arms warfare, it requires a level of maturity that you just can't get in a 19-year-old.
I guess,
right?
yeah.
So,
What other regimental traditions do the LARs have?
Well, I mean,
Period.
it's
And what is the role of tradition in a military sense? What happens when you lose your traditions? Because I do perceive that as kind of happening with the LARs, and I really noticed it after the Yugoslavia missions really started taking off, and we started integrating more and more with the regular force. We started to lose our sense of who we were.
yeah.
Like I noticed when in '88, when I joined up, we were told to wear our berets in a certain way, to tilt the cap badge forward. And this was the grease ball tilt.
Yeah.
And this was an identity marker. That stopped in the mid-'90s.
I kind of dug that. I mean, that was like the traditional way of wearing a beret in the military, I guess.
Yeah.
Right, because
Is that what
the
you-
Americans do it, 82nd Airborne. Yeah, like where you got the big cavity behind the
Yeah.
cap badge.
Yeah,
But
the
we
ca-
would-
cavity
But we
behind the
would
cap badge.
tilt
Okay.
the badge forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like Mark Vankavich always, he still wears his beret that way now when you see him. His cap badge is tilted forward at a 45.
Yeah.
They would also polish their cap badges.
Yes.
They would get the old, like at the time,
Because it depends if you had one, right?
yeah, you had to get a brass one.
Yeah.
From like
Because the
previous era.
the issued CF ones were plated, so they didn't,
Yeah,
they didn't
so
really
you couldn't do
polish.
that. But
Yeah.
you had to go to a surplus store, find an old,
brass one, yeah,
yeah,
which oftentimes would be
60s.
king's crown instead of
Yeah.
the queen's crown, yeah,
and he would smooth it with an emery cloth,
yeah,
so that there was no features really identifiable on the badge, but it was completely smooth, so it would shine.
yeah.
You could get like it would reflect. It was so shiny.
I've never, because I think I got one from Rob Harley because Rob of course had was hoarding
Yeah,
them, but
yeah.
got a brass one from him and it was easy to shine. I could get them plenty shiny, but I never had to like smooth the features.
Oh,
off.
yeah.
But I
Some of the
I remember
old
seeing
dogs
some
from the
guys
80s
who
would
had,
do that, yeah.
Gone.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you just polish that a lot. It's like,
Yeah, like Mark would he would take an emery cloth and literally
oh yeah, to roof.
just to make it smoother. The more smooth it is, the more you can shine it.
Yes, that's true.
But there was I started to perceive in the 1990s a loss of unique identity markers
Yeah.
within the regiment.
I know myself personally, like going back to the beret, as you get rid of because the issue berets with the leather
Yep.
hat band, right?
Yep.
They were bigger and they had
They
more
were, yeah.
fabric to work with, and then you started getting the Belgian ones with the fabric one, and they were just smaller.
Yeah.
And so I ended up in the end, I got rid of the crease or the,
Yep.
with the space, and I just had one that was just I still got it.
Flat, yeah.
It just flat against my head. It kind of, I guess, more like more of a British style, I guess. And then, and I just kind of preferred the aesthetic of that, and that became in vogue around that time in like the early 2000s, and I kind of liked it.
So again, like this is something that you cover in your leadership course, as part of your 6B, like transition, like to the warrant officer level, where you go to St. Jean. It's a tri-service course, and I will say it's a very good course. I was told that I would be very pleasantly surprised by the caliber of instruction, and I was. It was definitely a worthwhile. Like it's a participation course. You're not going to fail. If you show up, you're going to pass. But I thought the content was very good, where it's focused on leadership and the various components of it. And one of the topics is, what is the role of tradition in the military?
Yeah.
And to sum it up, they're kind of saying that the job of the warrant officer is to stir the Kool-Aid. That's kind of your role. Like we all talk about drinking the Kool-Aid. The role of the warrant officer is to stir it up and put it in the glass. And so it really made me think, okay.
And add the poison? I mean...
It really made me think, okay, how do you, see, at the time, I was no longer with the LERs. I was already up on base.
Yeah.
But that was my formative experience. So I thought, well, how would you do that with the LERs? Because again, I don't know of any identity marker traditions that they have.
I have I can't think of any either. And part of it is, like, I spent 6 months in the Winnipeg Rifles.
Right.
And you go to a rifle regiment from a conventional infantry unit like the LERs, and it's, I mean, you're smacked right in the face with it, right with the drill.
Right.
Right? Because immediately you're doing different drill. You're everywhere you go. Every drill
that rifle's pace
is done at the double.
Yep.
Right? Like, so, and you do that automatically. So it's quick march, or well, it's double march. It's double march. So immediately, and and you do things, and like,
they had a different. They used to wear a lanyard too, didn't they? At the time, with the old combats with the hard chest pockets, they used to wear a lanyard, didn't they? Instead of a private's hook, you wore a black lanyard or something.
I don't know.
Maybe that was a Regina Rifles thing.
It might have been just a Regina. Could be. But like they had different drill
in general, and they wore a bandolier with DEU.
The DEU was different, and the black buttons and stuff like that. So there's a lot of this cultural stuff in a rifle regiment that's there, and I think the LERs probably. I mean, this is Winnipeg was right next to 2 PPCLI, but I sometimes think that the LERs. Proximity to the regular force, especially once Edmonton became like the super base of the West.
Yep.
Kind of hurt its unique identity.
Yes,
right?
I would agree 100%. 100%.
Well, I mean, this returns us to, why Ortona.
I thought for sure as soon as you said this returns us, I thought for sure we were going to Spain.
No.
I thought for sure.
More Spanish Civil War. We can't get away from it.
No, this returns us to the whole concept of Ortona, right? Because I think we lucked out to the extent we still had the veterans.
Yeah.
What traditions do we have? Well, we still have the colors. We have the battle honors on the colors. Ortona is one of them. Until, I mean, I guess really, who was the last one? Morris White. And it was tragic. I mean, it was tragic that he died at all, of course.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But that he died during COVID and we could not...
Yeah, we could not properly...
We could not observe.
Yeah.
Right? Because he was...
Talk about an iconic figure.
Yeah, so...
Yeah.
For anyone who knows what the Devil's Brigade was, it was a mixed Canadian-American...
unit.
Yep.
Special Forces unit that eventually became the inspiration for the U.S. Green Berets.
Yeah.
And Maurice White was not just a loyal Edmonton regiment member. He also became a member of...
Yeah. An alumnus of Devil's Brigade.
He was a member of the Devil's Brigade. And they were pretty switched on guys.
Yeah.
Now... When I met Maurice White the first time, it was as an amateur archaeologist.
Oh yeah,
he was helping excavate the old Fort Edmonton site.
Oh no way!
And of course, by that time he's in his 80s.
Yeah.
Just the nicest guy
he was
ever.
Yes,
right.
He was
the epitome of a gentleman.
Yeah,
and then
I think your math ain't mathing. Because how old was he when he passed away?
Oh, he was in his 90s.
Yeah. So he would have been in his like
maybe it would have been.
No, when I first met him, may have been before I even joined the regiment.
Yeah, so
is what I'm
right.
saying.
Might have been 70s, early 70s.
I'm saying when you're in the regiment, he would be in his late 60s, kind of thing, right?
I joined the regiment in 97.
97. So.
Yeah, and he died in his 90s a couple of years ago.
Okay, I don't.
97. Remember, it's 2025.
The math might be off a bit.
Yeah. I'm just saying your math ain't mathing is all, I guess.
Well, if he was say 25 and 45, let's just kind of do that as back of the napkin math.
Yeah.
Well, add 50 years to that. So yeah, you would have been 70, low 70s.
And then there was one Remembrance Day where the museum was open. Went into the museum, and they had up on a television in the corner. They had a video that they were playing, and it was an interview with Maurice. And he had never, ever, ever, ever talked to anyone about anything about that. He was just he never talked to it, and there he was talking about it. And they had a picture of him. he was on a rooftop in Ortona, and he was saying that he was on duty on Christmas Day as a sentry, and some poor German stuck up his head and he shot him. And he was tearing up as he described how he had killed another human being on Christmas Day. Right? And that, I was so gobsmacked that, and that was one of the reasons, obviously, he didn't talk about these things. Right? But again, that's how we've been able to maintain some level of tradition for ourselves, the three of us here, and our contemporaries at the time. Aside from that, it comes down to our individual qualities and characteristics as soldiers, how we interact with each other as team members when given the opportunity. And I've worked with both of you. And then aside from that comes down to the greater leadership. And I think that's what's always made or broken the company or the regiment in terms of its identity along the way. Being removed from the rifle company, I was also removed from a lot of that leadership stuff. So I didn't have a chance to gauge it. But when you're talking about these things, what's won or lost? Well, I think what we've lost is we're able to still focus on Ortona, but even then we've still lost some of the other outliers that were part of that. When Bill died, when Maurice died. And if I may, one more thing. What have we lost?
Or say, maybe what's the cost of losing that tradition?
Well, in terms of tradition, so identity. Here's something very personal I'm going through right now. Right, my father died in February. Right, my mother, and I love my mom.
Yeah,
I love my mother.
Yeah,
right. But he died mid-February. It's like, okay, we're going to have a memorial for him, a celebration of life, and it turns out it's going to be the end of June.
Yeah.
So now we're talking 4.5 months later.
Yeah.
Right. I have to sit through that.
Yeah.
Right. Once we get there, it's going to be presided over by, the church, the minister of the church, and they're a very leading edge, quote unquote.
What denomination?
United Church.
Okay. Yeah.
But they are the United Church that
the
lesbian sister of John, who was sat here, who was moderator of the United Church, said this church is a pain in her ass.
Why?
Because they are the cutting edge of woke.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Right? So, and
social gospel.
They used to be my church. When the revolution was occurring, they had it all right.
Yeah.
Right? Nowadays, they drive me insane with their counter revolutionariness, right? They're like, you won the battle 20 years ago. You can stop fighting now.
Now they're shooting the prisoners.
Anyway, so he's going to be giving the eulogy.
No, now they're having the Cultural Revolution.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Me, and there's no alcohol allowed in the church.
Oh, really?
For this thing, right?
Oh, wow.
And I like, it's like everything
What's
I
the point
need.
of being a progressive if you can't have a drink?
Yeah, that's I've never heard of progressives like hard woke being teetotalers.
Don't even get me started. Don't even get me started.
Is that a thing?
Is that because some people are allergic to alcohol or something, and so therefore we can't?
Is that a common thing?
We shouldn't digress on this.
Oh yeah. Okay, go on. So anyway, this is going to be a.
Now
you're not looking forward to this.
This is a chicken. I've thought about not going.
Yeah.
Right. I know I have to go. I know 51% of me is going to go because at least 51% of me is going to regret not going. Right. But, and I don't know if this is chicken and egg, if I came into the military needing this, or it's part of the traditions of the military, right? But when it comes to death, I need ceremonial burial, right?
Right.
And that's been taken away from me here. There was no funeral. We haven't put my father in the ground. He's been cremated.
Yeah.
There was no wake.
Right.
Well, I tried to have one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it helped.
Yeah.
But what I need is a formalized ceremony.
Yeah.
right?
I get it.
And that's very military,
I get it.
right? And that actually leads me into another thing. And this isn't a request or anything. I'm saying your part in all this,
Yeah.
Patty, in the regiment.
Yeah.
And one of the things that held it together for me was you as the piper,
Right.
right? For those, Patty's also called pipes because,
Yeah, at the time, yeah, because I was the only bagpiper, yeah.
and every Remembrance Day, there was, after I got out, the people I would run into all the time that would say hi to me
Yeah.
and that were visible was
Yeah.
yourself and Brendan, for
Yeah.
example.
Oh, because
Usually Mark.
I always remember seeing you at City Hall. Always. You were there like a dirty shirt.
So, but that's you. So you're part of that tradition for me, the piper. And the fact that it's not you anymore, like part of my brain is still expecting it to be you, right? So there's tradition for you, right? And again, it's this domino effect, connecting dots. What is tradition? Tradition is Ortona. It's Ortona Day. It's Remembrance Day. Remembrance Day is another tradition. Now you might say, well, that's a national tradition. That's a military tradition.
Yeah.
Everybody does that. But for us, my first year in, we were for some reason doing it in St. Albert.
We were, because Colonel McLean
Was from St. Albert.
he was connected to St. Albert City Hall, or he had ambitions to be elected in City Hall or something like that. He had some kind of connection with the municipality of St. Albert.
But once he was gone,
We
we were
Back
back
to
at
the
Edmonton City Hall,
Yep.
and as it should be, as it's
Yes.
tradition. It's
Yeah.
because there's the traditional, we have the key to the city, we
Yeah.
are the city's regiment.
Yeah.
Right? So again, that's
Yeah.
tradition.
And I remember that. I don't recall who it was, but it was the CO at the time who said, like, that's our cenotaph. Maybe it was the OC. But it was some leader, got up in front of the parade and said, okay, boys, like, this is our cenotaph. When all the rage was to go to the Butter Dome.
I was going to say, everyone
Yeah.
is going to, in fact, in my youth, before I
Yeah.
joined the regiment, I was always going to the Butterdome one.
Yeah.
I didn't know what an LER was.
Yeah.
I didn't,
Yeah.
Yeah, because everyone wanted to parade there, like as in everyone is in Edmonton Garrison.
Yeah.
And a lot of the Legion, because it was indoors.
Yeah.
It was not bitterly cold. And there were some cold parades at St. Albert, boy. Holy cats.
Well, yeah, that one in St. Albert, that was the one, and not everyone had their overcoats, so
Yeah.
we couldn't wear our overcoats.
Oh, yeah. Like there were
Not
some
everyone had their
bitterly
gloves, so we
cold
couldn't wear our
parades.
gloves. It was like,
Yeah, vicious. And everyone wanted to go to the Butterdome because it was comfortable, it was warm, and of course that's where the crowds were. There's something to be said in having that audience, and of course the people were much more amenable to coming out to a indoor ceremony. And I remember there was voices, there was pressure, hey, maybe we should be a part of that bigger show. And the vehement pushback by the traditionalists saying, no. Edmonton Cenotaph, that's our cenotaph. This is our city. We belong to the city. That's our place. And there were some pretty thin parades. Like I remember doing the parade at the Cenotaph there, and there might have been maybe 40 people. Yeah. There were probably more people on parade than there were bystanders. And then the city embraced it. I don't know who the mayor was, but then the city embraced it about having, maybe it's also because the Butterdome died, but then the big change was Afghanistan.
of course it was.
And then all of a sudden, we are at that parade, and there are hundreds of people. Hundreds.
Yeah.
Gathered around, like I remember. And then the indoor ceremony at the beginning, where they... and that's where I think, at that point, the city really started embracing this, where they would allow us to do a ceremony in City Hall, and that it would be standing room only. Yeah. They would fill that area before the steps leading up to the council chamber, that foyer in City Hall.
Yeah.
They would line that with as many chairs as they could. And it was still, those chairs would fill up, and then the stairwells and the how would you say, like the second, third floor, the mezzanines, all the way up to the roof, crowded with people looking down on it. And I remember thinking, like, wow, this is a change. This is a change from the 80s and the 90s, boys. Something And the numbers, of course, have settled back down, right?
They're still larger than they were then.
Oh, absolutely, still larger. And now I go to. I'm kind of like collecting cenotaphs, where I'm trying to go to cenotaphs where they rarely have the support of a live piper. So I'm doing a lot of like small rural communities within an hour of the city, or like say community cenotaphs. Like I've played Calder, I played Beverly. So I'm trying to spread a bit of the love sort of thing. So I haven't been to City Hall in a while, but I understand that there's still. Do you go to City Hall? Did you go last year?
I marched.
Oh, right, in the old guard. Okay, so how was the crowd? Is it still well attended?
Oh yeah.
Good. That's something I really like. I hope that continues.
What's that?
The old guard. I really like that idea.
Man.
When I retire, boy, if something ever happens where I cannot play pipes anymore, that's where I am gonna be. Count on it.
There was a good dozen of us.
Yeah.
I was marching with Mad Murrah, and I was never in the same time as him.
Yeah.
Mark was there.
Yeah.
Jack Toy was there.
Nice.
And
you guys had about a platoon, didn't you?
No,
platoon minus?
No. We had a section.
Oh, okay.
We had like a section plus. Yeah, there was
Man,
two ranks of 6.
I really hope that grows, man. That's a good thing.
That is
a great thing.
So Jack Toy was
And
there.
you were what, the blazers and gray trousers?
Oh no, I was just wearing my suit.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
I was,
You got to fix that, buddy. Get the blazer and the trousers, buddy. Come on, call up Mark Vankavich. He'll show you what you need. Go down to Moore's. They've already got a contract with Moore's. Moore's knows exactly what you need. Just walk in and say, hey, I need something for the LAR Association. They know exactly what to set you up with.
I was actually at a function last weekend with Leroy LaFlèche.
Oh yeah, how's he doing? Enjoying retirement?
He seems to be doing all right.
Right on. I liked him. He was a good guy. Yeah. But anyway, go see Darcy at the kit shop. Get your blazer crest. Get with the program here, buddy.
I know, man. I like my 3-piece suit. Although it's gotten tight.
No.
It's getting tight
You're
around
not allowed
the waist.
to do that. You're going to be in the old guard. Let's be in the old guard. Gosh darn it.
I wasn't even expecting to be there.
Well,
it's just that,
okay, so it works for you. You kind of got. Let me guess. You kind of got press ganged.
Well, it was just kind of.
You went to just be in the crowd and someone muckled onto you.
I was standing behind Murray and.
My drill would just be. My drill was never good when I was in.
Yeah,
like,
but
neither was mine. It comes back to you.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
it comes back. It's like riding a bike. It's like playing. It's like skating.
Well,
Yeah,
I remember one time I've been self-conscious about this for quite a while because one Remembrance Day, somehow I got press ganged into laying wreaths.
Oh yeah,
Right at City Hall.
Yeah.
And you were still in.
Yeah.
That's because you were in stores. I had to do the same thing.
Yeah, we might have been doing it at the same time, but it was like it was me and we had to go up like 4 times.
Yeah.
Right, and Vernon and I were together.
Like you were an escort.
Yeah.
No, we both would lay wreaths, step back.
Really? Okay.
And all the time. So of course, like this is after the unit is marched out and is standing in parade in front of the street.
Yep.
And so we would march up with the wreath, lay the wreath, come back, take a step back, salute. I think left turn and right. And
Left
so I
turn.
think
Or right turn. Right turn.
right
Salute. Right turn.
Yeah, there was no
Off you
left
go.
turning going on.
Because
There.
it's a dismissal.
maybe I guess it was right
Take
turn.
a step back.
It seemed to me because
Yeah.
it seemed to me we always went that way, but my memory isn't perfect, so it could
I
have
think
been
you
because
did
it seemed
you
because
did a right. No, you did a right turn in the end, and then you.
And you
went
wheel
around
off.
the cenotaph, around the back of the cenotaph, maybe
I
to
don't
get the next wreath
Yeah,
and then
who
come
knows?
back.
Who knows?
Anyway,
You may have done a left turn because maybe that was the way the parade was laid out. And that's where the wreaths were.
well, the
You
wreaths
go back
because
there,
I'm sure the wreaths were all on
Yeah.
the left, right? Because
Yeah.
the reflect pool's
Yeah.
over there, so we went.
At the end of the day, you're going to go where somebody tells you to go.
Yeah. So
not like it was-
you were
not like
going
it was your
somewhere-
decision.
somewhere with this.
later at the Legion,
Yeah.
like Karth and,
Yeah.
the young Mark and all this. Your drill sucks, Thorson. You're horrible. What was I doing wrong? Nobody tell me. You're just
nobody
horrible.
tell you, you suck.
It's just like what? You
not their
suck.
job.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, they're just there to tell you you suck. That's it. So
Constructive criticism, jackass.
No way.
None of that.
Nope.
You suck. So I've always been self-conscious about the state of my drill.
yeah, but you know what? That's what a veteran's guard is for. It's the other thing is like shut up. I'm a veteran.
Yeah.
Who gives a shit? However, one thing I do want to do when my time comes, I want to bring back the navy blue beret for the association with the green maple leaf felt. The green felt maple leaf behind the cap badge, which is silver. I want to, because I think, like you see that in museum, right? And I think, man, that looks like $1 million. I want to bring that back.
Only you think that.
You don't like that? Well, I think I think the green beret doesn't look as good with like the blue blazer. So I think it's the same shade of beret as the blazer. So I think it looks a little bit better.
If I had any say in it, they'd get rid of the blue blazer and gray pants. I'd find like somebody to pick with taste to pick something better because I can't stand the way the blue blazer looks in the gray pants.
What would you do?
I don't know. I'd say I'd hire somebody with taste.
Well, actually, I don't think you need to change the blazer. You need to change the pants.
Yeah.
What would you change the pants to?
Maybe matching. Matching the blazer.
I don't
Or
know.
a darker gray, not light gray.
Yeah, like
I'm gonna throw a dart.
part of me is like, I mean, the colors aren't great. The regimental colors don't really go great with themselves.
I'm gonna guess
Like the
that
French gray, the green.
blue blazer is because of the blue facings. I'm gonna guess that's what it's from. That it's the color of the colors is why we have a blue blazer. That's my guess.
Oh, and the gray is probably
and the
from
gray
the infantry
pants
patch.
is from.
See, but I think if you were a gray suit would look
the
better.
regimental color kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think a gray suit would look better, or like
Yeah,
the fact that the blazer and the pants are different color just bugs me.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's the problem with blazer and pants, anyways.
Yeah,
I don't
Right, and
know.
they can't be that
I
different.
kind of like the bicolor actually.
Aren't
Mix it
you?
up a little.
You're jump qualified, aren't you?
Yes.
You've got a maroon beret.
I could wear a maroon beret. Yeah.
You should wear a maroon beret. You've earned
Like.
But are you wearing berets now? Because you're piping, so you're still dressed up as a
Yeah,
piper, right?
whenever I'm on Remembrance Day, I'm always in kilt and that sort of thing. So
Well, what do you wear on the job?
I wear green because I'm not in a jump unit. So
Yeah, that's the rule now. Right?
yeah, you can only wear even back during the jump platoon.
You
As
can only
soon
wear
as you
maroon,
became sergeant major, you had to go back to the green beret because the sergeant major was not on strength of the jump platoon.
Yeah.
Well, that's fucking horseshit.
Yeah, it was. It was not a popular thing.
Okay, that's a bad move.
But like
tradition-wise, right?
say with 3rd Battalion.
It's like saying a warrant. If you're not in a warrants role, you have to shave your beard.
Yeah. Like say in 3rd Battalion with the jump company there, if you move to, they rotate it around, whether it's like, I don't know whether it's like A, B, or C company. And like C company only exists on paper, so it goes back and forth between A and B company. Like they change it every couple of years kind of thing to spread the love around.
Which one's the jump company?
Yeah, so which one's the jump company? One is like the jump company, and then the other one is
Supposed to be like the mountain ops company.
mountain company. Yeah. Or they'll every now and then you'll get some CO with a brainwave who kind of says, "I know, we'll make it a long range patrol company or something like that." They try and find something
To make the troops' lives more miserable?
or to give the troops some kind of feeling that they're doing something special and interesting and worthwhile.
Yeah.
When really people only ever want to be part of the jump company because you get the maroon beret, right?
Yeah.
It's an obvious symbol of they're not actually elite. They're actually very average, but they like to pretend that they're elite.
Yeah.
It's very important to their sense of identity.
Yeah.
But if you're not in, like, let's say you are in the jump company, you've gotten your maroon beret. Okay, now they move you over to quartermaster stores. Or let's say they move you over to the other company. Well, you lose your maroon beret. You still wear your white wings because you did occupy a slot in a jump task unit. Therefore, you get to keep those white wings forever. But then you move to combat support company, green beret. If you are in the jump school at Trenton, you wear a maroon beret. But if you go to the infantry school, let's say you go from jump company where you wear a maroon beret and then you do a task at the infantry school, you put on your green hat. You only get to wear the Maroon Beret when you are in a jump task unit.
Huh.
Now, I remember at Remembrance Day, Ed Boodle would wear his blazer with his Maroon Beret. Mm-hmm. And I said, like, can you do that? And Ed said,
I don't care.
I'm a civilian now. I can do whatever the hell I want.
Well, that's
Fair.
It actually took me a while.
Fair.
I didn't know if I was allowed, and I also felt a bit self-conscious. But I wear my beret with my suit, and I make no bones about it.
Well, there is a body of tradition that does that, like non-regimental people. For example, say someone who served in a service battalion, or someone who served with, say, engineers or something like that, where it's just a way to say, hey, I want to show, like, they wear their medals on their suit and they wear their old beret. This is done commonly.
Well, even like there's that I can't remember the name of it, but there's that Veteran Motorcyclist Association.
Oh God, those guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like Tim Turner's in it, right?
Oh yeah, he's in. There's the airborne ones.
Yeah.
There's the airborne veterans.
Yeah.
And then there's veterans MC.
Yeah.
Like the thing that kills.
But
me,
these guys are dressed up like bikers. They're wearing cuts. They
Yes.
have their medals on, and they'll be wearing their berets.
Yeah.
I went to one of these ones with Darce.
Yeah.
I was a chauffeured her there because
Yeah.
it was a motorcycle thing. And so
It's different if it's a motorcycle event and you're riding there.
Yeah.
It's very different. But I'm talking about Remembrance Day.
Yeah.
When you see these guys in their dirty jeans and their motorcycle, like okay, you drove here in a car, yet they're dressed like their Harley should be parked, outside in the lot. It's like, you guys, you look like you're homeless, man. Like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with getting, say, get your own blazer, get your own kind of, what we would think of as a regimental identity for your club.
right.
But put on a fucking tie, a shirt, man. Like, put some effort into your appearance, please. Like, just spend at least 15 minutes to look professional before you come out, to Remembrance Day looking like you just rolled out of bed, or that you just came off a bender. I woke up on the floor of the clubhouse, and now I've got Remembrance Day. Good God.
I'm finding over the course of this one because of the subject matter, and I can only imagine as we ebb and flow in and out of things like this that we can't possibly have any listeners at this point.
No,
right?
No. This is pure, this is why this whole podcast is just because we like talking to each other.
Yeah.
There's no audience.
Well,
Nobody's
just in
listening to this crap.
case someone's thinking of leaving and hasn't yet. What occurred to me, because it was mentioned as we talked about this last week, maybe bringing Dutch liberation into the conversation would be appropriate.
Just given the recency of the anniversary.
Yeah, so it's been 80 years. I went to the commemoration last weekend.
Yeah.
And I mean, the relationship Canada has with the Dutch. Now, again, you want to talk about tradition. You want to talk about the importance of why we fight, why we do it, right? What inspiration do we draw from that, right? That to me is a tradition as well that defines things. The Dutch people have such love. 80 years later, so 3+ generations later,
Yeah.
for the Canadian people as a nation. Just based on what our troops did, including the Eddies, back in 1944-45. And we're just following the orders. They just happened to be the ones who showed up. They were Canadian about it, of course, going in there. But it really brings home, some of those intangibles, those big intangibles. Commitment to democracy, liberty.
Which seems to be fading today.
Well,
I don't know if you could mobilize a nation of the West to fight the good fight in the way we could back in the Second World War.
No, I think you're right. You know, there's no question. And actually, I was going to...
You can't get... I think the big part of it is you can't get a solid, all-encompassing narrative the way you used to be able to. Right?
Well, and that's...
What do you mean?
Well, there's just too many competing sources, right? Like, as soon as, hey, we're going, you know, like look at the competing narratives just over Ukraine,
Right.
right? Like,
So like
we sit here and
diversification of media.
diversification of media,
Yeah.
right? Because we sit here and we're all generally of the view that Russia's bad, Ukraine independence, Ukraine,
Yeah.
the defense
Ukraine
industry-
should be allowed to exist.
in the right.
Yeah.
Well, JD Vance doesn't think that,
No.
and he's vice president of the United States,
Yeah.
right? Donald Trump has said that, whether he meant it or not, has said that, pardon me, since the election, he is appropriately referred to as the never to be sufficiently damned Donald Trump. May the fleas of 1,000 camels infest his armpits.
According to whom? According to whom?
That he should properly be referred to that.
Really?
Yeah, well, I got because of him, even if he didn't do it
yeah.
intentionally.
Yes.
I got $30,000 worth of guns in the basement that are going to go to the government now in the end of October if they don't extend the amnesty.
Trump really screwed us, didn't he?
He did.
I don't know why he wanted Carney in so bad.
I don't know either. I think maybe he thinks Carney's a pushover.
Maybe.
Or maybe he's just a punching bag. I don't.
I don't
Yeah.
think he thought that out at all. I think he's just saying
Look,
shit because he says shit.
He didn't. Well, yeah, that's how it started, right? Like he didn't understand the effect he was having.
There's part of that
Right,
that he
like-
didn't know and he didn't care. He
No.
was.
Yeah, I don't think he ever cared, even once he
Oh,
figured it out.
He doesn't care about anything.
Yeah.
He just cares about attention.
Yeah.
Yeah. That there's. I'm sure that an argument can be made to the contrary. But I think that would be giving Trump. That would be making the assumption that Trump is engaging in a political strategy that I don't think he does.
I think it is a. We have really digressed here.
Yeah, we
But-
have, and I'd like to get off this as soon as possible.
But I think once he the fact that he was having an effect was good enough for him, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I'm influencing this. I don't care which way I influence
Yeah,
it. Just that I'm influencing
It appealed to his narcissism.
Right. That hits at him. But
Yeah.
anyway. So
I mean,
yeah.
you're right, like both of you. I mean, this society we live in these days. I was actually going to tie it into something similar. Like, so we've got the whole Dutch nation who have.
I want to say this is the disadvantage of being in North America, right? Like North America, the United States, Canada,
Yep.
was never under the existential threat that all the nations of Western Europe were,
right.
or Europe period.
Yeah.
Right. So it makes sense that the Dutch are grateful that they speak Dutch and that the Swamp Germans speak Swamp German instead of regular German.
Yes.
Right. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. It makes sense that they are grateful that their national survival
yeah.
was vouchsafed or was given to them.
Yeah.
By a foreign nation.
Returned to them.
Whereas here, when
returned to them, or was, how would you say, preserved.
yeah.
Their national survival was preserved by an act of sacrifice by other nations, right?
Yeah. Whereas here, I've had the actual conversations with people who are older than me, in fact, talking about the Second World War and being asked, who was that between? It's just like,
Yeah, and so
right? So that's a disadvantage of being here, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know,
well, though, what I was actually going to tie that in with, because now we're going back. I think this is pre-COVID, if I'm not mistaken. There were 2 military personnel that were killed within the space of a couple of days. One was a French-Canadian warrant officer was run down
Yes.
in a
Yep.
parking lot. The other was, and I think he was a Highland.
Yes, he was
reservist.
Argyle and Sutherland Highlanders.
yeah,
He was
the
shot.
the Cenotaph Guard.
Yeah,
The Santa
yeah,
Guard.
Yeah.
yeah.
Right? And what's always struck me about that, and the Dutch thing really brings it home for me. The people in the Netherlands commemorate this. They teach
Yeah.
their school children. The school children go out. And I mean, how many school children are in the Netherlands and how many Canadian graves are there? There's like 7,000 Canadian graves, I think. But all these school children, they're
Yeah.
all tending them.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I don't know if they're rotating or what. In the meantime, we have a young reservist gets killed guarding the cenotaph in Canada. And what really bothers me about that, he was guarding that cenotaph. He had to be there guarding it because some drunken idiot had pissed on the cenotaph. So it was a lack of respect. This is the reason that they had someone there guarding the cenotaph at all. Is some drunken idiot from Ottawa peed on the cenotaph.
They were doing like formal cenotaph guard, like muzzle down.
They're not a security guard. Like they're not from National Capital or like the Capital Commission. No, like they were a formal guard,
like rifle muzzle down.
They had no scope. Their practice was not there.
I get that, but that presence was there specific to that reason. You go back and check it out. I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
I'm very sure it's not. That they were there purely ceremonial. That we have uniformed
personnel at the cenotaph. Yeah,
they're a peace officer.
They don't,
and all they do is guard things like Rideau Hall, Ottawa, Parliament Hill, the Senate, the National Cenotaph. But they have freedom of action and movement, and they can intercept people who they feel look suspicious. Whereas Cirillo could not. He was there, rest on arms, reverse.
Yeah,
purely ceremonial role.
I'll go back and check that out.
Okay,
but anyway. That is definitely what I remember. Okay. That there had not been such a presence, and that presence was required.
You feel he was like to protect?
Well, not to protect it so much as just to have a presence there, right? And maybe at the same time say this is what is supposed to happen at this place, not piss on the fucking thing, right? I very distinctly remember that being.
I remember seeing an article just a couple of weeks ago. It was a few years old. Like it was a few years old, like 2021 or something like that. The first American infantry division, the oldest American unit that has continually operated and has never been stood down or removed from the order of battle.
Yeah, I think that'd be the big red one.
Yeah. Anyway, they're known. There's this battalion or brigade. They're known as the Old Guard. They do the ceremonial guard at Arlington National Cemetery.
Okay.
Oh, I think they're an independent brigade. I don't think they're part of the first infantry.
Yeah. Like I stand to be corrected on this.
Yeah.
Anyway, in order to be to do a shift at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, you have to pass a pretty rigorous qualification.
Yeah, it's difficult.
You have to pass a written exam on history. Like it's an accomplishment, basically. It's not an easy one. And then you get the title of Sentinel, and you wear a badge on your DEU or their equivalent, for the rest of your career.
Yeah,
like you get this insignia. So one of those soldiers, in fact, the only one in history, actually became a major general. He started off as a troop in that unit, became a sentinel, moved on in his career, commissioned, and then he retired as a major general. And he wanted his last day in the military to be back as guarding that, to do a shift at, or what they call a walk, to do a walk at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And so the article was about how this was done and how he did the evening shift, like they do in 4-hour shifts or something like that, and he did 8 p.m. till midnight, so that when his shift ended at midnight, he was no longer in the United States Army. And I thought, very, very interesting article and very beautiful tradition about how they have that, and that how Canada we've never really done that equivalent thing. We've never, like I remember to mention his name one more time, Mark Vankavich, where I remember we were talking about the United States and their view of remembrance and their relationship between the military. Oh no, sorry, it wasn't Mark Vankavich, it was Rob Real, another figure in the unit, where he said, the United States gets it. Mm-hmm. They understand the link between the people and the military and the nation. Whereas we have always, especially in the peacetime era, we've segregated. The military has seen itself as very separate from the civilian world.
Have you been to Vimy?
No, I have not.
I went probably 5-6 years ago. My dad took my sister and a couple of nieces.
I desperately want to go see those World War I battlefields, but I don't know if I'll ever be able to afford to.
Vimy, you get to Vimy, and it's a Canada that does not exist anymore.
Oh, yeah?
Like, you get there, the Vimy Monument is grander than anything you've seen in this country.
It's, yeah.
Like,
it's incredible.
in its grace, in its beauty, but even in its size and scope, right?
Yeah.
It is un-Canadian. You will never see a monument to anything inside Canada that is the equal of the Vimy Monument.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just, I mean, it was built in the 30s?
Yeah.
Just prior to the Second World War.
Yeah. In the interwar period, yeah.
Yeah,
Late in the interwar period.
Yeah. Yeah, late 20s. It might have been
Keep
completed
talking.
in the
I'll
early
check.
30s.
I'll
But
check
it is,
while you're doing that.
it's something else. It's really majestic, but it's just that.
We're not that kind of people.
We're not that
anymore.
country
Yeah.
anymore, right? Like,
Yeah.
and it's sad. Like, look, because like even look at a provincial legislature, right? Mm-hmm. Pick one. They're all ours,
exactly the
BC,
same.
Yep.
Saskatchewan's. They're these grand,
Classical,
sandstone masonry constructed buildings designed for their permanence.
26 July 1936
36
was the
completion date.
unveiling.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Spanish Civil War was what date?
I don't know.
July what?
Yeah.
26 July 1936 was the unveiling of the monument.
Yeah, so that's exactly 1 week after Franco
Crossed
landed
over
in,
from Spanish Morocco.
Yeah.
And it's actually one thing because they have like an interactive at the Vimy Memorial.
Yeah.
They have an interactive. They have a trench system, and like Vimy is a place where you can't go off the paths because there's
Right.
still lots of
Lots of UXO.
UXO
Yeah.
around it, right?
Yeah.
So they have like a trench system and stuff, and they have like interpreters there. And I always was there after I was like, we left. I was like, why isn't that a Class B that the Army does? Right? Have
Yeah.
a Class B. You go to France for a summer
Yeah.
to be
An interpreter.
as an infantry corporal to talk
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
life as a corporal, right?
Yeah.
Maybe there's some education to be specific to World War I, but it would also be good to have Afghanistan vets over there talking about their own experiences in Afghanistan, right?
Yeah.
So, you'd have like 10 of these guys or 20 of these guys a year.
We've been. I just watched an interview with Eric Kaufman on this, where we have deconstructed not just Canada, but the entire former British Empire we've deconstructed our history,
Yeah.
where we are no longer proud of who we are.
Yeah.
We're no longer proud of who we were. We look back on our history now as an embarrassment. We look back on our history as something to be ashamed of. And that the past is not to be celebrated. The past is not to be retained.
Yeah.
So you're right.
That's one of the things we try to do here at Radio Free Ortona. But should we also talk about the Radio Free portion? It's probably not as long a conversation.
What is the Radio Free portion?
We're Radio Free Europe. So it's about broadcasting liberty to the oppressed.
I thought that was just a slogan. I thought that was just catchy.
Radio Free Europe?
Well, no, Radio Free.
Well, it comes
the
from
Radio
it comes
Free
from
was
a phrase.
because we're purely audio.
No,
Well,
Radio Free Europe used to broadcast across the Iron Curtain.
But Radio Free Ortona was just like Radio Free X is kind of like
So we're not.
I didn't think we actually had meaning behind it.
No, we don't. We're not pretending to be broadcasting to the oppressed, and that's they're oppressed by supreme boredom.
And we're further oppressing them.
Yes, we're further oppressing them.
Inflicting more boredom on them.
Yeah.
Yeah. But well, I mean, it's a certain perspective, right?
Yeah.
Like, because, socialism bad, communism bad, whatever you want to call it. No, I don't want to.
Well, I thought that our purpose was that we could actually, like, the purpose of us all coming here is that we could, from a left and right perspective, that we could come together and actually discuss issues on their merits, which is something that we felt was kind of a bit of a lost art or a dying art in the contemporary environment.
My goals, I don't know if we ever achieved my goals, my original aspirations when I came up with this idea, and I'm taking credit for it because it was my idea.
It was
to ask better questions, because we're just three schmucks. I'm a truck driver, you're a management consultant, you're a
whoa,
you're an HR.
Whoa,
basically.
I don't manage.
No, I said you're a management consultant.
consultant.
I didn't say you're a manager. You're a management consultant.
You're a management consultant.
I have nothing to do with management.
Or maybe an
I'm
organizational.
a leadership consultant.
Oh.
Which in business is
Whoa,
called
whoa,
management.
Business is called
whoa.
management. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the whole problem. So that's why I refute the whole thing. We will stop that right
Okay, you're a leadership consultant, and you're
Thank you.
and you're
I'm a-
you're an HR at the Army.
Base or I ride a desk. People ask, what do you do in the military?
Soylent Green, actually.
Yeah, if I want to sound exciting, I say I'm a paratrooper. But if I want to be honest, I say I ride a desk and I push a computer mouse and I allocate jobs that people don't want.
And you wear a uniform while doing it.
And I drink a lot of coffee.
And we thank you for your service.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's not true.
We don't thank you for your service?
No, there are some tasks I allocate that people really do want, like to go overseas. Once people find out that you're involved at that level, I get emails from people I don't even know who know somebody who knows somebody. Yeah, can you get me a tour? No, I can't. I don't have that suppose.
You don't? No.
Not really.
Because if you
no.
really did have that ability, you could monetize that. I mean, you might as well, because the Army is so corrupt these days.
I suppose. And a lot of the tours they're decided, like who gets them at a much higher level. Like I can tell you, like I do not have the ability to assign a tour to a guy.
Yeah.
I have the ability to assign a tour to a brigade.
Yeah.
And even then, that decision is made by other people.
Right.
Like they don't trust a warrant officer to say, oh yeah, you're going to decide how many, this is all hashed out a year in advance.
Yeah.
Where the brigades, like we know that we're going to get a given tour. We're going to be in the hopper for, Operation Laptop, Roto, 2701.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So then we'll get all 4 brigades together and say, okay, these are the tasks we're going to be given. How many can you guys support?
Yeah.
And what can you possibly handle? And the reserves try and project what they'll be able to fill. And then we look at past data. Well, say reassurance, 2501, 39 Brigade was able to support this. For impact, they were able to support this. So based on that, we'll probably be able to take these tasks. Okay, great. So then that's what the allocation is going to be. So when the tour actually rolls in, I allocate based on that plan that was already made 2 years prior. And then the other thing is a lot of them, like say for Unifier, where we're advising the Ukrainians, they completely changed everything on that. They completely rejigged that tour in February, March, where all of a sudden we're not training troops anymore. We're training their command teams. Mm-hmm. So all of these guys who we used to send an entire company of soldiers to go train, the Ukrainian foot soldiers, the Ukrainians now train their own infantry.
Yeah.
They do that themselves. What we're training is their brigade and division commanders. So now it's all major and up.
Anyway, so that was more detailed than you ever wanted on Patty's job.
Yeah.
The point is that we're 3 guys.
And for all you reservists out there, quit emailing me, asking me for tours. I can't give them to you.
Yeah. The point is that we're just 3 guys with no real special knowledge. And so our best hope in having these conversations with each other is that maybe we could ask better questions about the subjects that we're talking about, even if we couldn't get the answers.
Yeah.
I don't know that we do that, but we try.
We try.
And we enjoy ourselves.
So that's why we do it.
We get to see each other.
What's the phrase that
So
we can't afford a therapist, so we have a podcast.
So we have a podcast, yeah. Also, therapists assign homework, and who wants that shit?
Yeah.
I mean, you do all the homework. Patty does lots of homework for these conversations.
I do absolutely nothing. I show up and I process and regurgitate.
Like, yeah, I'll ask, well, what about this? And you're like, I don't know. I don't care.
My feelings are.
Well, sometimes it's just I'll just process the logic of what you just said and just
my feelings are. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, call Kevin Williamson.
blah.
We're talking about feelings again.
Yeah.
We don't know things, we feel them.
Gentlemen,
Alrighty, well,
that's a wrap.
hopefully you all appreciate the last hour and a half of navel gazing we've inflicted on you.
Yep.
And tune in next time for episode 50 when, I don't know, we'll probably talk about election results or something stupid like that.
Probably.
Thanks, everybody.
go.